Hey guys, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy Heroes video. Today I'm bringing you guys a new video all about Wampa. This is sort of a Wampa 101 per se, and today I want to discuss his stats and abilities, including his Zetas and if they're worth it or not. And I also want to talk about his viability in all parts of the game, such as arena and territory wars, and territory battles and raids. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So first, let's get into his stats. So for the following stats, they're all related to characters at max gear and star level because SWGOH.gg only has the list of characters stats levels at 7-star gear 12. So kicking it off, we'll start with protection, which is a really important survivability stat, as everyone knows. And Wampa comes in at 34,998, which is 25th out of all the characters in the game. That's the top 18%. That's really good. And of all the attackers in the game, he is 4th, only behind Veteran Smuggler Chewbacca, Rebel Officer Leia Organa, and Death Trooper. His health comes in at 29,260, which is 36th of all characters, and that's the top 26%. So for health and protection, he's really, really strong and stays in around the top 20% for all characters in the game. His basic damage is actually second in the game, only behind Director Krennic, and it comes in at 8,609 damage to 9,515 damage, and as we'll get into it later, and as most people already know, he deals double damage to rebels on that attack, so if you double that stat, it's just way above Krennic and is the highest basic in the game. His AoE is 4th of all characters in the entire game. This damage clocks in at 5,203 to 5,749 damage, and he is only behind Gar Saxon's Calculated Ambush, Mother Talzin's Dark Magic, and Echo's EMP Grenade. And of course, the last major stat, and also the most important, is speed. Speed for Wampa isn't too much. He has 127, and it drops in about 67th of all 141 characters in the game, which puts him in the top 48%, but his speed still, like I said, is not anything to write home about. So now that we're done with Wampa's stats, let's hop right into his abilities. So his basic, which is called Wamp, reads as follows. Deal physical damage to target enemy and inflict damage over time for 2 turns. If the target was exposed or staggered, stun them for 1 turn. If the target was debuffed, gain 20% turn meter. If Wampa isn't debuffed, gain 20% turn meter. This attack can't be evaded, and this attack has plus 100% offense against rebel targets. This ability is really solid for a basic. It has so many things happening, and it addresses one of the major problems that Wampa has, which is his speed. The turn meter gain of up to 40% really helps Wampa get going and helps him take more turns, which is kind of obvious for more turn meter, which helps him get more powerful because of his abilities that make him stronger, as we'll see later on. The basic that he has also can't be evaded, inflicts damage over time, and can also have a chance of inflicting stun if they're staggered or exposed, as we said. However, most of the teams that he's run on doesn't really work, except maybe an Empire team with Krennic's AoE, but even then it's kind of a stretch. Plus, as a little cherry on top, to help us against the rebel cloud that looms over this game, Wampa also has plus 100% offense against rebel enemies. So let's move into Wampa's first special ability, which is called Icebreaker, and it reads, Dispel all debuffs on Wampa, deal physical damage to all enemies and daze them for 2 turns. Wampa gains protection up 150% until the next time this ability is used, which can't be dispelled or prevented, and this has a cooldown of 5. So taking into account that this is the 4th highest damage AoE in the game, and all the extra effects that it adds, this ability is really good. While it does have a high cooldown of 5, his turn meter gain from his basic and second ability, as we'll see later, help him get this ability off fairly often. The best part of this ability, that I think personally, is the self-dispel and the protection up plus 150%. This is insane. When I first read this ability, I thought it was a mistype. I thought it was 15%, but clearly it wasn't. To put this in quick perspective, if Wampa had, say, 30,000 protection, once he uses this move, he gains 45,000 protection, and this is an undispellable buff. This allows him to be far more durable, and also helps with his offensive capabilities, as we'll see from one of his second uniques. Also, what cannot be overlooked in this ability is the AoE daze for 2 turns. That's so good. That's becoming something that we see in a lot of AoEs for characters released, and it really helps against the current metas that we have. In matches where you can get this off against teams, say with CLS, Most AoEs have to be behind R2 stealth, they'll just get annihilated by all the counterattacks. But with Wampa, if he uses the AoE and inflicts daze, you don't have to worry about everyone countering, and you don't need to rely on, say, someone taunting or being stealthed from R2. And it's also important to note that daze can destroy Jedi training raid teams if you can land it successfully and keep it on. So now we move into Wampa's second special ability, which is called Furious Foe, and it reads, inflict healing immunity on all enemies for 2 turns, which can't be evaded. Wampa gains 40% accuracy, 40% critical chance, and 40% offense, stacking until the end of the encounter. Wampa gains 15% turn meter for each defeated ally and each active enemy. This ability starts on cooldown. So this ability doesn't have too much to talk about. Everything is pretty concrete. I like the turn meter gain mentioned before because it takes away from the most negative impact of this ability, which is that it does not have a direct impact on gameplay, say as a damage dealing move would, and the TM gain lets Wampa jump back into the battle and attack faster with a more impactful board presence. I like also that Wampa is a looming threat character, meaning like the longer he lasts, the stronger he becomes, and with this ability you can really see Wampa's immense potential in raids, which are just long encounters. This ability has a Zeta, and for Wampa, both of his Zetas, while interesting, feel sort of lackluster. The Zeta on this ability is inflict healing immunity on all enemies for 2 turns, which can't be evaded, and while this is an interesting one, this one feels more like an Omega upgrade to me and something that I wouldn't recommend Zetaing. So now that we've gotten through all Wampa's special abilities, let's start on his first unique, which is called Howling Rage, and it reads as follows. While Wampa has protection up, it has plus 20% counter chance, plus 50% offense, and plus 50% tenacity. So this ability doesn't have too much going on. The only thing is that it has synergy with his AoE, which gives him his protection up. And from that protection up, you get 20% more counter chance, more offense, and more tenacity. So the way you have to deal with Wampa is you have to get rid of him usually before he can use his AoE, or else it gets significantly more difficult because of this unique. And for Wampa's second unique, which is called Cornered Beast, and it has a Zeta, and it reads as follows. Wampa has plus 50% counter chance. Wampa has plus 10% counter chance, plus 5% health steal, and plus 5% offense for each damage over time effect on each enemy. This unique is pretty basic even with the Zeta, and only gives 50% counter chance without. The Zeta right now in Arena almost has no effect, and the only other part, which would be raids, it adds such a small amount of offense and health steal, and counter chance is already going to be super high anyway, that compared to what he's been gaining for offense from the Furious Foe ability, this is pretty much negatable, and it's such a small amount. So while this Zeta helps Wampa be a little bit better in a lot of fields, it relies too much on debuffs, which can be cleansed too often in meta that we have now, and I wouldn't really recommend this Zeta either, unless you want to make Wampa a little bit better, but even then I still wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so now that we're done going through all of Wampa's abilities and some of his key stats, let's get right into how he performs in the most important part of the game, Arena. So Wampa in Arena is a very solid attacker and can really cause hell for a lot of people because of his high survivability and health. And there are quite a few things to take into note in his kit that make him perfect for the meta right now. And that is unevadable basic to deal with all the foresight given by Jedi training raid teams and General Kenobi just in general with his unique. Daze, which helps stop insane turn meter from Jedi training Rey and the droids, and stops all counters from the CLS meta teams. And of course massive damage output to put a swift end to his enemies. There are a few teams that I have found Wampa to work with, the first being a Rex-led team, the second being a CLS-led team, and the third being a Zeta Vader team. I should briefly mention that in theory crafting for Wampa, I thought he would be great with a Jedi training Rey team with all the stuns off of the exposes that they give, but even with high speed, he just doesn't get enough turns to make the same impact that, say, Scavenger Rey, Old Ben, and Resistance Trooper would give. Rex lead works really well because of the massive amount of turn meter gain Wampa gets from the crits that are so prominent in this meta, which allows for him to use Furious Foe more and lets him snowball out of control faster. Under a CLS lead, Wampa is just sort of a plug-and-play character. In the footage above, I used him in place of Han, and he does almost the same job there, hitting through foresight and stuff. So the CLS team just does its thing normally, and Wampa's just sort of along for the ride to help contribute. However, he does add one major thing that helps the CLS teams against the Night Sisters, and that's another strong AoE to hit Night Sister Acolyte through her stealth. And lastly, Wampa in a Zeta Vader team is a lot of fun. In this situation, if the team was strong enough to work in the current meta, this would make his cornered beast Zeta worth it. However, this team only worked in the top 100s of Arena and didn't hold very well on defense, so while this team is entertaining to play with, it really isn't too viable. And just to add that these are just teams that I've tested with. I'm sure there's other teams that Wampa could work with, say with Empire teams, with Probe Droid or something, but on the account that I use Wampa on, I don't have access to that team because it's not farmed up and there's not as many mods to use. So if I could test that team, I would, but I'm not sure how he would perform on a team like that. So to conclude, Wampa would work best under a Rex-led team, I would think, and works very well in that position to counter Jedi Training Raid teams, Luke teams, any team you can really see, except the big one, which is Night Sisters. He really isn't a big change to the CLS team, and while good and performs well on the Zeta Vader team, the team itself just isn't viable enough. So now let's hop into talking about Wampa in the raids. And while Wampa is pretty good in Arena, he is probably one of the most excellent raid characters they've ever added. And I will say that I'm going to exclude the Rancor from this video because everyone sort of knows how to solo it. You just need like CLS, some Rebels, and they can pretty much do it. But for the AAT, it's becoming a big thing now for people getting big scores, like up into the 25 millions, 30 million, stuff like that. And some of the footage I have here today, you can actually get 39 million damage under a raid team with Zeta Darth Vader lead. The reason you can score these absurdly high damage counts with Wampa is because, as I mentioned earlier, he's sort of a looming presence character. The longer he stays alive, the more damage he starts to do. So if he keeps using his Furious Foe, and he keeps gaining the 40% offense every time, 40% critical chance, 40% accuracy, he'll never miss. He'll have 100% critical chance, and insane amounts of stacked offense. Like, as you can see in some of these clips above, he's hitting for over 200,000 damage on his basic. Do note these clips above do have Wampa's unique Zated. However, it doesn't make too much of a difference on the offensive side, as it's pretty much negatable, as I said earlier, because there's so many 40 stacks. There's only about 150% offense added in the clip above. So now let's get to another place in the game where Wampa really shines, and that's PvE territory battles. Territory battles, the dark side ones, have been kind of controversial in the way that they've been really difficult, and Wampa is definitely one of the ways that you can counter the difficulty. There's a few reasons that Wampa is as good as he is in territory battles. The first is obviously on his basic. He has plus 100% offense against rebels, and every single enemy that you come up against in the territory battles is a rebel enemy. Wampa also has daze on his AoE, and a lot of the characters that you're facing in the territory battles have a lot of team synergy where they're giving each other turn meter, counter attacking and assisting, and the daze help shut down those people who, like the officer or the Hoth Rebel soldier who counters and inflicts daze. It stops them from countering and giving brutal debuffs to your team. Wampa also can gain protection back with his AoE, giving him protection up, and that allows him for more survivability throughout all 4 phases of each combat mission. One thing to note about Wampa in territory battles, however, is that while it says that his Furious Foe stacks, within each encounter, the Furious Foe resets, which is actually, I think, a bug, and it's really annoying. It does the same thing with effects like Darth Maul's unique, Asajj's Rampage unique, and any kind of stacking buff that lasts throughout the encounters. It actually cancels out every single encounter, so then by the end, Wampa is just the same as the beginning. But it really doesn't matter because of how high damage he has against rebels. So yeah, guys, that about wraps up this video, all about Wampa. The places he's good in, the places he's not so good in, the teams he's good in, raids, arena, all that sort of stuff. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and maybe subscribe if you want. If you enjoyed this video, I'll be posting more content like this in the future. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.